pimps, players, and bitches, whichever category you might fall into. I'm here and I'm back with another one, array info. It is a Python exercise done in Codewars. Let's look at the instructions here. Sometimes we need information about the list arrays we're dealing with. You'll have to write such a function in this kata. Your function must provide the following informations. And then it has some bullet points here. I'm going to explain this my own way because I don't believe this is worded very well and not explained very well. In this one, you're going to receive a list containing several items. What you are going to return is a two-dimensional list that contains the following criteria, each in their own sublist. In the sublist, the element one, or the first sublist, is going to contain the length of the array. The length of the list, actually, because in Python, we deal with lists, right? Well, foundationally, of course, we've got NumPy, and we have arrays, but here it's going to be lists. So first is going to be the length of the list, then the number of integer items in the list, the number of floats and decimals in the list, number of string characters in the list, and then finally the number of white space items in the list. And of course, notice strings and white space. These are both strings, so you'll have to do some categorization there. Basically, you're getting a count of the different data types that are present in the original list, along with the length of the list. And here's a little format of what it's supposed to sort of look like. This will be the list that you output, and you see the sets of brackets where you have bracket, and you got the inner brackets. See, this is two-dimensional list, and the first sublist is going to be the length of the original list. The second sublist is going to be the number of integers in the original list. Then it's going to be the number of floats in the original list. Then the number of strings, and then it cuts off, but the number of white space items would be the last sublist. So your input is going to be a one-dimensional list containing various items. Your output is going to be a two-dimensional list with sublists according to these instructions. That's what it's going to be. Now scroll down and look at some examples. And there's some more info here, but we're going to zoom to the examples real quick, sort of, just to give you more of an idea of what's going on. Looking at this first one, you see you've got a list of various data types, and then here is your output, where it is each sublist is really a number corresponding to counts. The first one is going to be the length of the incoming list. Then second, the number of integer items, 3. And you see you got 1, 2, 3 integers. Then this is the number of floats. And you have one float and another float, and so on. So that's the format. Input, one-dimensional, output, two-dimensional. And now there's some other rules to apply here. If any item count in the list is 0, you'll have to replace it with none, with a none value. Let's unpack that one. So if any of these counts are 0, you have to replace that 0 sublist with none in a sublist, kind of like they have it down here. That's what you got to do. So if you come upon counts and any of them are 0, you've got to replace it with none as a sublist. That's extra rule number 1. Extra rule number 2 is if the list is empty, return nothing in the array. So that corresponds to this third example. If you have an empty list, return nothing in the array, and that's it. So those are all the rules. So essentially you're going to be returning a two-dimensional list where each sublist has counts according to the instructions. If there's nothing, you return that string that says nothing. And if any of the counts are 0, you're going to return none in brackets. You got all that? I know you don't, but we're moving on. Yeah, very kind of impractical exercise, but I think some of these are good because in your coding life, your coding journey, you're going to be given weird instructions that just don't make sense, and you're just going to have to conform to them to produce a result. So this is kind of an example of that. You don't really see any practicality here, but it don't matter. Just get the result. So the first piece is if there's nothing in the original list, you return nothing in the array. So there's your conditional there to cap things off. And then I'm going to do some copy and pasting here for my original solution. The first thing that I do once the initial kind of input validation is out of the way is I create integer variables that are going to hold the counts of the various data types. Like the first one, IT, will be the count of integers, F will be the count of floats, S the count of strings, and dub the count of white space. And my tactic here is that I'm going to loop through the original list and grab, really as I loop, I'm going to get the counts of these different data types. And I'm going to do that by using the isInstance built-in method. So yeah, the isInstance built-in method is the first argument is what you're checking. The second argument is going to be the data type. So this is like saying is x index I an integer, and it returns true or false whether it is or not. So if the current element is an integer, it's going to return true, otherwise false. And so if this is an integer, I'm going to increase the count of integers. That's what's happening there. And I'm going to do floats. Float on, float on. And I'm going to do... this next one's going to be string. And you use str as the abbreviation for string in Python, data type wise. So I'm doing something a little bit different here because I have to count strings and white space. Well, they're both strings because white space is just going to be a space, but they're both strings, so they're both going to fall into this category. So I need to do another check for white space. So now that I've determined that I've got a string, I'm going to do an if to check for if this string is a space. See, isSpace is a string method, so I'm calling it off with a string. So if this string is a space, I'm going to do semicolon, of course, and I am going to increase the count of the white space. Yes, and if it is not a space, I'm going to count it as a regular string. Yeah. All right, the counts are done at this point. Once the loop is done, the counts are done. And I'm going to create a two-dimensional list. Whoops. Got to copy and paste over here. Something happened. Hopefully I didn't screw anything up. Yeah, it looks like I did. Weird. Hopefully the volume. Whoa, what's going on here? Technical difficulties, folks. Paste. Yeah, alrighty. Doesn't always go off without a hitch. Okay, so line 16, what I'm doing here is I'm setting up the two-dimensional list that I'll be returning. So you see the first element is a sublist containing the length, then the different counts are in the other sublists. But I'm not done yet because I've got to determine if any of these sublists contain a 0 value. So I'm going to do a loop. I'm going to do a loop because I'm going to loop through this to see if any of these are 0. Now, I'm going to start I at 1 because I'm not going to check element 0. I'm not checking element 0 because I've already determined that element 0 is not 0 as lines 2 and 3 determine. If the length is 0, I do not get to this point. I return up here on line 3. So I'm starting on 1, and then let's get into it. So this line says that if the sublist that I'm currently on has 0 as its value, basically if element 0 of the sublist is equals 0, that means the count is 0, and I will act accordingly, and acting accordingly is placing a none in that spot. Not a religious none, a value none. Is there any other kind of none than a religious none? I guess NUN? Yeah. Whatever. Not supposed to talk religion up in here. Okay, so once that's done, I've placed my nuns in the proper spot, and it's time to return my two-dimensional list. And that is it, folks. A little verbose on the code. You could totally do this in a more condensed manner, but I wanted to do it in an uncondensed manner to show you guys the algorithm in full detail. Not trying to be cryptic here because this is a teaching moment. You can be cryptic when it's about getting it done in as few characters as possible. Alrighty. Bring it back in here. Let's test. We pass. We attempt. We pass. Correctamundo, my friends. And that's it for me. And that's it for you. You're going to hear me and possibly see me in the next video. But until then, folks, I am out.